What if the oldest library on earth held the receipts for how a man named Nimrod went from ordinary to legendary, from just another ruler to the first mighty one after the flood? What if the archaeologists cracked open that library in the ruins of Nineveh and found flood stories, king lists, rituals, and prayers that matched what the Bible already said? And what if tombs half a world away in Peru, designed like wombs, meant to rebirth the dead with power, just like the act that may have transformed Nimrod himself? These are not myths, these are discoveries you can still see with your own eyes. So let's walk through it together. Nowhere better to start than Genesis. And Genesis 10 says Cush fathered Nimrod. He began to be a mighty one in the earth. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. That single phrase holds a big key. He wasn't born mighty, he began to become mighty. The Hebrew here is a little unusual. It points to a process, a change, a transformation. Gabor is the same word used of the mighty men in Genesis 6, the offspring of the sons of God and daughters of men. And before the Lord can mean face to face, or in God's presence, or in defiance of, like in your face. So what happened to Nimrod, and how did he begin to be mighty like this? In the mid-1800s, archaeologists digging the ruins of Nineveh uncovered the library of Ashurbanipal. Imagine walking into a royal archive 2,600 years old, filled with over 30,000 clay tablets written in cuneiform, stacked in chambers. Today, much of that collection is at the British Museum in London. You can actually see the tablets with your own eyes. The flood accounts, omen texts, and hymns. In 1872, a young museum assistant named George Smith stood up in London holding a newly translated tablet from the library. He read the account of Utnapishtim, the Mesopotamian Noah surviving a great flood in the Epic of Gilgamesh. The crowd literally gasped. For the first time, people outside the Bible saw proof that the world remembered a flood, carved in clay centuries before Christ. You can see photos of the Epic of Gilgamesh flood tablet in the British Museum's archives. The instructions of Uruk, considered the world's oldest wisdom literature, are preserved on tablets in collections such as the University of Pennsylvania Museum of Archaeology and Anthropology. These short wisdom lines, "Do not speak arrogantly and do not steal," read a whole lot like Proverbs. The Sumerian king list survives on multiple tablets. One of the most famous is in the Ashmolean Museum in Oxford. It divides rulers into before the flood and after the flood. In Egypt, carved into stone walls of pyramids at Saqqara around 2400 to 2300 BC, we still have the pyramid texts. You can walk inside the Pyramid of Unas at Saqqara, Egypt, and photograph hieroglyphs that are the oldest religious texts in the world. The tablets and inscriptions from Mesopotamia show how a king went from a man to a mighty one. Kingship was not just politics, it was ritual. Enthronement rites included sacred garments, oil, and prayers declaring the king chosen by the gods. Daily offerings of food and drink were set before idols. You can see offering tables and altars in the Pergamum Museum in Berlin. Divination and omens were everywhere. Priests read animal livers, practiced astrology, and scattered arrows. Clay models of livers used for training are displayed at the British Museum and the Oriental Institute in the University of Chicago. Ezekiel 21:21 describes this exact ritual. Ziggurat building was central, with temples like Etemenanki, the Tower of Babel, rising in Babylon. The ruins are still visible near Hila, Uruk, and the Ziggurat of is fully restored and open to tourists near Nasiriyah, Iraq. Kings also performed sacred marriage rituals where they symbolically united with the goddess Inanna or Ishtar through a priestess. Reliefs and inscriptions tied to Inanna can be seen in the Iraq Museum, Baghdad. Blood hunts were a display of power, kings proving themselves by hunting lions and enemies. The famous lion hunt of Ashurbanipal reliefs are on display at the British Museum. Deification was the final step, with hymns declaring kings divine. These are preserved in the Ashurbanipal tablets. This is how a man began to be mighty, not through muscle alone, but through ritual that blurred the line between man and God. And here the Bible warns us directly. In 1 Samuel 28, King Saul, desperate and abandoned by God, sought out the witch of Endor. She was a medium who communed with spirits, and against God's widely known commands not to, Saul asked her to summon the prophet Samuel from the dead. But when Samuel appeared, the witch screamed in terror, because when these mediums do this, it's not supposed to be the real person's spirit. It's supposed to be a spirit that the medium controls. When she realized that she had defied the living God and something far beyond her control had manifested, she was terrified. That moment exposes what these rituals really were and are. Attempts to draw power from the dead and from spirits that God had forbidden men to touch. Nimrod's path of becoming mighty may have involved the same kind of necromantic gateway, inviting communion with the spirits of the mighty ones who perished in the flood. Saul's story shows the danger. Nimrod's shows what happens when a man embraces it fully. The darker possibility is that Nimrod entered what we might call a womb tomb ritual. Across cultures, death and rebirth were ritualized. In Mesopotamia, Tammuz was mourned and reborn annually. And Ezekiel 8:14 records women weeping for him at the temple. In Peru, the evidence is carved in stone. At Silustani near Lake Umayo, towered tombs called chulpas still face the sunrise. Archaeologists have found burials in fetal position returning to the dead to the womb of the earth for symbolic rebirth. You can walk among these towers still today. At the Paracas necropolis, mummies wrapped in fetal posture are displayed in Peru's national museums. South of Cusco, the cave of Pacaratambo is remembered as a place of origins, an earth womb in Andean tradition. The concept of Pacarina, caves and springs as wombs of life, is well documented by Andean archaeologists. The same themes of womb, death, and rebirth run across the globe. Now imagine Nimrod, a chamber shaped like a womb, priests are chanting, invoking the spirits of the pre-flood mighty ones, a man lying down to symbolically die, rising again, possessed and empowered, no longer just a man but a vessel. Genesis says he began to be mighty. That phrase could describe this very moment of possession through such a ritual. The evidence is still visible today. In London at the British Museum, you can see Ashurbanipal's tablets, the Epic of Gilgamesh, omen texts, and lion hunt reliefs. In Berlin, you can walk under the reconstructed Ishtar Gate. In Iraq, you can climb the ziggurat of Ur, see the ruins of Babylon, walk the mounds of Nineveh, and visit Uruk, now called Warka. In Egypt, you can descend into Saqqara's pyramids and read the pyramid texts still carved in stone. In Peru, you can stand in the chulpas of Silustani, explore the Paracas necropolis, and enter the cave of Pacaratambo. The stones and artifacts are not imagination. They are there to be seen and as a witness. So now you see it. Nimrod didn't start out mighty. He became mighty by stepping into the ritual system of his age. Enthronement rites, offerings, omens, temple towers, sacred marriages, blood hunts, necromancy like Saul's forbidden act, and possibly a womb tomb rite that tied him to the spirit of a fallen Gabor. That's why Genesis marks him as the archetype of defiance, the prototype of the Antichrist. If this gave you maybe a clearer understanding of how and why Nimrod might have gotten to be mighty, please leave a comment with your thoughts and tell us what you think. And subscribe for more unfiltered truth that ties the Bible to real-world discoveries you can see with your own eyes and touch with your own hands. And share this with someone who needs to hear the truth. God bless you and your family, and God bless these United States. Shalom, shalom, brothers and sisters. Maranatha.